What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses finds herself in the hot seat on daytime television, facing questions that push her to her absolute breaking point? What you're about to witness is the moment Jennifer Lawrence went from charming guest to volcanic force of nature, all because of one question that crossed a line she never expected anyone to cross on live television. This isn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This is the day America watched a superstar completely lose her composure in front of millions of viewers, and the aftermath that nobody saw coming. Before we dive into this explosive confrontation, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me what you think really triggered Jennifer's meltdown. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around for every single word of this heated exchange. The morning started like any other episode of The View. The iconic roundtable was buzzing with its usual energy as the hosts prepared for what they believed would be a routine promotional interview. Jennifer Lawrence was scheduled to appear as part of her press tour for her latest film, and everyone expected the typical mix of light banter, behind-the-scenes stories, and maybe a few laughs about her famous clumsiness. The audience was packed with fans eager to see their favorite actress, many holding signs with her name and wearing shirts featuring her most iconic movie roles. Joy Behar sat confidently at her usual spot, shuffling through her note cards with that familiar smirk that regular viewers know all too well. She had clearly done her homework, but there was something different in her demeanor today, something that suggested she was planning to dig deeper than usual. The other hosts, Whoopi Goldberg, Sarah Haynes, Sunny Hostin, and Alyssa Farah Griffin, were going through their own preparations, completely unaware that they were about to witness one of the most explosive moments in the show's history. When Jennifer Lawrence walked onto the stage, she was everything audiences had come to expect. Radiant, graceful, despite her self-deprecating jokes about being clumsy, and genuinely warm as she greeted each host with hugs and smiles. She wore a stunning navy blue dress that complemented her blonde hair perfectly, and her energy seemed to light up the entire studio. The audience erupted in applause and cheers, with some fans even standing to show their appreciation for the Oscar-winning actress. Welcome back to The View. We are here with the absolutely gorgeous and talented Jennifer Lawrence. Whoopi announced to thunderous applause. "How are you doing today, sweetheart?" "I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me," Jennifer replied, settling into her chair with that characteristic laugh that had endeared her to millions of fans worldwide. "I always love being here with you ladies. You make me feel right at home." The first several minutes proceeded exactly as everyone expected. Sarah Haynes asked about the new movie, and Jennifer delivered her answers with the perfect blend of professionalism and humor that had made her such a sought-after talk show guest. She shared a funny story about a mishap during filming, where she accidentally walked into a glass door thinking it was open, sending the audience into fits of laughter. "That's so you," Sunny laughed, shaking her head. "Do you think you'll ever outgrow the clumsiness, or is it just part of your charm at this point?" "Oh, it's definitely here to stay," Jennifer responded with a grin. "My publicist has actually started building extra time into my schedule just for the inevitable accidents. Last week I tripped over literally nothing and somehow ended up tangled in a red carpet. I don't even know how that's physically possible." The conversation flowed naturally from topic to topic. They discussed her preparation for the role, her thoughts on the current state of Hollywood, and even her recent hobby of pottery, which had apparently resulted in several lopsided bowls that she was surprisingly proud of. Jennifer seemed completely at ease, joking with the hosts and engaging with the audience in that effortless way that had made her one of the most likable celebrities in the entertainment industry. But then, something shifted. Joy Behar, who had been relatively quiet during the initial portion of the interview, suddenly leaned forward with an intensity that caught everyone off guard. She had been waiting for her moment, and now she was ready to strike. "Jennifer, I want to talk about something a little more serious, if that's okay," Joy began, her tone taking on that investigative edge that longtime viewers knew meant trouble was coming. "There's been a lot of discussion lately about privilege in Hollywood, and I'm curious about your thoughts on how your background may have contributed to your success." Jennifer's smile faltered slightly, but she maintained her composure. "Of course, I think it's important to acknowledge that I've been incredibly fortunate in my career and in my life in general. But let's be more specific," Joy pressed, her voice taking on a sharper edge. "You grew up in Kentucky. You've talked about your family's financial struggles, but you also had opportunities that many people don't have. You were able to move to New York at 14 to pursue acting. Most families can't afford to uproot their lives like that. Well, yes, my parents made sacrifices, Jennifer replied, her voice becoming slightly more defensive. But they believed in my dream, and they worked incredibly hard to make it possible. It wasn't easy for any of us. Joy wasn't satisfied with that answer. She shuffled through her cards and looked directly at Jennifer with an expression that made the other hosts exchange worried glances. I did some research on your family's background, and I found some interesting information about your father's construction company. It seems like your family might have been more financially comfortable than you've let on in previous interviews. The studio fell silent. Even the audience seemed to sense that something uncomfortable was happening. Jennifer's entire demeanor changed in an instant. Her shoulders tensed, her jaw tightened, and for the first time since she'd walked onto the stage, she looked genuinely angry. "I'm sorry, what exactly are you implying?" Jennifer asked, her voice dropping to a dangerously low level that sent chills through everyone watching. "I'm not implying anything," Joy responded with that infuriating calm that made it clear she knew exactly what she was doing. "I'm simply pointing out that there seems to be some inconsistency in how you've portrayed your upbringing. Some might call it a narrative that's been crafted for public consumption." The other host looked horrified. Whoopi was shaking her head almost imperceptibly, while Sarah and Sunny looked like they wanted to crawl under the table. Alyssa was frantically scribbling notes, probably trying to figure out how to salvage what was rapidly becoming a disaster. Jennifer's eyes flashed with a fury that nobody in the studio had ever seen before. The transformation was so sudden and complete that it was like watching a completely different person emerge from behind the carefully crafted public persona that audiences knew and loved. "Crafted for public consumption?" Jennifer repeated, her voice rising with each word. "Are you seriously sitting there suggesting that I've been lying about my childhood for sympathy points?" Joy doubled down, clearly relishing the reaction she was getting. "I'm simply saying that the facts don't always align with the story. Your father's company was quite successful, your family owned a horse farm, and yet you've consistently portrayed yourself as someone who came from humble beginnings." "Stop right there," Jennifer said, holding up her hand with such force that Joy actually flinched. "You have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. And the fact that you think you can sit here and dissect my family's financial situation like some kind of amateur investigative journalist is beyond insulting." The audience was dead silent now, the kind of silence that only happens when people realize they're witnessing something they probably shouldn't be seeing. Camera operators were zooming in, producers were frantically talking into their headsets, and the other hosts looked like they were watching a car crash in slow motion. "Jennifer, I think what Joy is trying to say." Whoopi attempted to intervene, but Jennifer wasn't having it. "No, Whoopi, let her finish," Jennifer snapped, never taking her eyes off Joy. "Since she's done so much research on my family, I'd love to hear what other fascinating discoveries she's made about my personal life." Joy, either oblivious to the dangerous ground she was treading or simply too stubborn to back down, continued her assault. "Well, since you asked, I also found it interesting that you've never really addressed the fact that your family had connections in the entertainment industry through your mother's side. That's quite different from the small-town girl discovered by chance narrative that's been so popular with the media." That was the final straw. Jennifer shot up from her chair so fast that it rolled backward and nearly toppled over. The entire studio gasped as one, and security guards actually took a step forward, unsure of what was about to happen. "You want to know about my mother's side of the family?" Jennifer's voice was now trembling with barely controlled rage. "My mother's cousin worked as a grip on low-budget films 20 years ago. That's the big entertainment industry connection you're talking about. A man I met exactly twice in my entire life, who had absolutely nothing to do with my career, who never made a single phone call on my behalf, and who I haven't spoken to in over a decade." She was pacing now, her hands gesturing wildly as years of frustration poured out. "And you want to talk about my father's construction company? You want to know how successful it was? It went bankrupt when I was 16. We lost our house. My parents had to move in with my grandmother, and I had to figure out how to support myself in New York City while still trying to make it as an actress." Joy looked like she was finally realizing that she had pushed too far, but Jennifer was just getting started. "You sit there with your research and your note cards, thinking you've uncovered some great conspiracy about my background, but you don't know anything about the nights my mother cried herself to sleep because she was terrified we were going to lose everything. You don't know about my father working 18-hour days trying to save his business, or about me eating ramen noodles for weeks at a time because I couldn't afford anything else." The camera was capturing every moment of this meltdown, and viewers across America were watching slack-jawed as one of Hollywood's most composed stars completely lost her composure on live television. Social media was already exploding with clips and reactions, but inside the studio, everyone was frozen. "Jennifer, please, let's take a breath." Sarah Haynes tried to interject, her voice shaking slightly. "No, I'm not taking a breath," Jennifer shot back, whirling around to face the entire panel. "I'm tired of people like her," she pointed directly at Joy, "thinking they can rewrite my story to fit whatever narrative they want to push. I'm tired of having my family's struggles minimized and dismissed because it's convenient for someone's agenda." Joy finally found her voice again, though it was notably less confident than before. "I never said your struggles weren't real. I was simply pointing out that perhaps the full picture is more complicated than what's been presented." "The full picture?" Jennifer laughed, but there was no humor in it whatsoever. "The full picture is that my parents sacrificed everything for my dreams. The full picture is that my mother took out loans she couldn't afford to keep me in New York. The full picture is that my father's health suffered from the stress of watching his life's work crumble around him. But I guess that doesn't make for as interesting a story as suggesting that I'm some kind of privileged fraud." Sunny Hostin, clearly uncomfortable with the direction things were heading, attempted to steer the conversation back to safer ground. "Jennifer, I think we all understand that success in Hollywood is complicated and that everyone's journey is different." "Do we?" Jennifer turned to face Sunny with an intensity that made the seasoned host visibly uncomfortable. "Because it seems like some people at this table think they understand my journey better than I do. It seems like some people think they can Google a few facts and suddenly they're experts on my life story." She turned back to Joy, who was now fidgeting with her note cards and avoiding eye contact. "You want to know what really bothers me about this whole line of questioning? It's not just that you're wrong about the facts, though you are spectacularly wrong. It's that you're sitting here trying to diminish the very real struggles that my family went through, struggles that shaped who I am and why I work as hard as I do." The studio was so quiet you could hear the cameras whirring as they captured every moment of this unprecedented breakdown. Producers were frantically trying to figure out whether to cut to commercial or let this play out, knowing that either decision could have massive consequences. "I never intended to diminish anything," Joy said weakly, finally looking up from her cards. "I was simply trying to have a conversation about privilege and opportunity in Hollywood." "By attacking my family?" Jennifer's voice cracked with emotion. "By suggesting that I've been lying about my background for my entire career? By implying that everything I've achieved is somehow illegitimate because you think my parents had more money than they actually did?" Alyssa Farah Griffin, the newest member of the panel, looked absolutely terrified as she watched this unfold. She had clearly never experienced anything like this in her time on the show, and her inexperience was showing as she sat frozen, unsure whether to speak or remain silent. Jennifer continued her verbal assault, her voice growing stronger and more confident with each passing moment. "And let me tell you something else that your research probably didn't uncover. When my father's business failed, when we lost everything, do you know what happened? The entertainment industry that you think handed me opportunities on a silver platter? They turned their backs on us. Casting directors who had been interested suddenly stopped returning calls. Agents who had been courting me disappeared. I had to start over from nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing." The raw emotion in Jennifer's voice was palpable as she continued, her words cutting through the studio like a knife. "You want to talk about privilege? Let me tell you about privilege. Privilege is being able to sit behind that desk and tear apart someone's personal history without having lived through a single day of it yourself. Privilege is thinking you have the right to question someone's truth because it doesn't fit the narrative you want to tell." Joy was now visibly uncomfortable, shifting in her seat and glancing toward the producers off camera as if hoping someone would rescue her from the monster she had created. But Jennifer wasn't done, not by a long shot. "I rebuilt my career from the ground up," Jennifer continued, her voice gaining strength with each word. "I auditioned for every small role, every independent film, every commercial that would have me. I slept on couches. I worked restaurant jobs between auditions, and I never, not once, used any supposed family connections because they didn't exist in the first place." Whoopi finally found her voice and attempted to regain control of the situation. "Jennifer, I think we can all appreciate how passionate you are about this topic, and perhaps we should move on to talking about your new film." "No," Jennifer said firmly, holding up her hand again. "We're not moving on until this is addressed properly." Joy asked me a question. She made accusations about my family and my integrity, and I'm going to make sure she understands exactly how wrong she is." The audience was completely transfixed. This wasn't just a celebrity having a meltdown. This was a masterclass in standing up for yourself when someone crosses a line. Social media was going absolutely crazy, with clips already being shared millions of times and hashtags trending worldwide. Joy cleared her throat, clearly realizing that she needed to either apologize or double down, and unfortunately for everyone involved, she chose the latter. "Jennifer, I understand you're upset, but I think you're overreacting to what was simply meant to be a thoughtful examination of how different backgrounds contribute to success in Hollywood." The collective gasp from the audience was audible. Even the camera operators seemed to lean in closer, sensing that Joy had just made a catastrophic mistake. Jennifer's eyes went wide with disbelief. "Overreacting?" she repeated slowly, her voice dangerously quiet. "You think I'm overreacting to you calling me a liar on national television?" "I never called you a liar," Joy protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "You said I crafted a narrative for public consumption?" Jennifer shot back immediately. "You said there were inconsistencies in how I portrayed my upbringing. You questioned whether my family struggles were real. What exactly would you call that?" Sarah Haynes looked like she was about to cry, while Sunny was furiously scribbling notes, probably trying to figure out how to salvage this interview for the show's reputation. Alyssa had given up entirely and was just staring at the table, clearly wishing she was anywhere else in the world. "Look," Joy said, attempting to regain some composure, "all I was trying to do was start a conversation about the complex nature of success and opportunity in Hollywood. I think you're taking this much too personally." That was the wrong thing to say. Jennifer laughed, but it was a sound devoid of any warmth or humor. "Too personally? You attacked my family's financial history, questioned my integrity, and suggested that my entire career is built on lies, and you think I'm taking it too personally?" She turned to address the audience directly, something that rarely happened during heated moments on the show. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly what's wrong with media today. Someone does 5 minutes of Google research, and suddenly they think they know more about your life than you do. Someone finds a few public records, and suddenly they're qualified to rewrite your personal history." The audience erupted in applause, clearly siding with Jennifer in this confrontation. The sound seemed to give her even more confidence as she turned back to face the panel. "Joy, I want you to look me in the eye and tell me if you've ever had to choose between paying rent and buying groceries," Jennifer said, her voice steady but intense. "I want you to tell me if you've ever had to call your parents and ask them for money when you knew they didn't have it to give. I want you to tell me if you've ever watched your father cry because everything he worked for his entire life was disappearing." Joy remained silent, clearly unable to answer those questions in the affirmative. "I didn't think so," Jennifer continued. "So maybe, just maybe, you should think twice before questioning someone else's story when you've never lived anything remotely similar to it." Whoopi made one final attempt to regain control. "Jennifer, I think we all understand your point, and I think this conversation has run its course." "Has it?" Jennifer asked, turning to Whoopi with a raised eyebrow. "Because I don't think Joy has actually acknowledged that she was wrong. I don't think she's admitted that her research was incomplete and her accusations were unfounded." All eyes turned to Joy, who was clearly trapped. She could either apologize and admit she was wrong, or continue to defend her position and risk making things even worse. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity before she finally spoke. "Jennifer, if I gave you the impression that I was questioning your integrity or your family struggles, that wasn't my intention," Joy said carefully, clearly trying to craft an apology that didn't actually admit any wrongdoing. "That's not good enough," Jennifer said immediately. "You didn't give me an impression, you made direct statements. You said my narrative was crafted for public consumption. You said there were inconsistencies in my story. You questioned whether my family's financial struggles were real. Those weren't impressions. Those were accusations." The tension in the studio was reaching unbearable levels. Producers were clearly debating whether to cut to commercial, but the sheer dramatic power of what was unfolding was keeping everyone glued to their seats. "Fine," Joy said finally, her voice tight with frustration. "I was wrong to question your family's financial situation without having complete information. I apologize if my questions came across as accusatory." "You apologize if they came across as accusatory?" Jennifer repeated incredulously. "They weren't accusatory. They were flat-out accusations. But you know what? I'll take it. At least you're finally admitting you were wrong." The relief in the studio was palpable, as it seemed like the confrontation might finally be winding down. But Jennifer had one more thing to say. "Let me be very clear about something," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had just won a major victory. "My family story is not up for debate. My struggles are not up for interpretation, and my integrity is not up for questioning by someone who thinks a few Google searches make them an expert on my life." She sat back down in her chair, finally appearing to calm down slightly, though the fire in her eyes was still burning bright. "Now, if anyone wants to talk about my actual movie, the one I came here to promote, I'd be happy to do that. But if anyone else wants to play amateur investigative journalist with my personal life, this interview is over." Whoopi quickly jumped in, clearly eager to move past the confrontation. "Let's definitely talk about the movie. Jennifer, tell us about your character and what drew you to this role." And just like that, Jennifer Lawrence switched back into professional mode, answering questions about her film as if the previous 20 minutes hadn't happened. But everyone in that studio knew they had just witnessed something extraordinary, something that would be talked about for years to come. The interview concluded without any further incidents, but the damage was done. Joy Behar had learned the hard way that some celebrities won't just sit quietly while you attack their integrity, and Jennifer Lawrence had shown the world that beneath her charming, self-deprecating exterior was someone who would fight tooth and nail to defend her family and her truth. As the credits rolled and the audience filed out, there was a buzz of excitement and disbelief. They had just witnessed one of the most explosive confrontations in daytime television history, and they knew it. So what do you think really pushed Jennifer over the edge? Was it Joy's relentless questioning, or was there something deeper going on? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more explosive celebrity moments that you won't see anywhere else.